So before we start the video, no, that is not a clickbait thumbnail. That is an actual thumbnail based on a poll that we're going to be talking about today that came out of Ohio that, if you're a Kamala Harris supporter, actually can give you a lot of hope. And then I'm just going to kibosh those hopes at the end of this video. So I'm going to just apologize ahead of time, but the numbers look good, but we're going to explain why they don't look good. But let's go into the polls. My name is Dave. Welcome to Voting Trend. Please subscribe if you're into polling information, voting trend information, understand the electorates in certain areas. We do geographical breakdown and all that, so please go ahead and subscribe. Now, there's only been a few polls that have come out over the last few days because we had the weekend and then the Labor Day holiday. One of those polls was the ABC Ipsos poll, which we really can't get any information from because they're just basically no crosstabs whatsoever. So Kamala Harris is up by 4 in this, so overall it's good. Ipsos is usually a good company, but still, we just don't have enough information here to determine whether this is a good poll or not. Another poll that came out was by Activo, which I've criticized in the past, and they still have the same problem here. They don't have an option where you can say that you don't know or you refuse. Like, their only options here is who would you vote for president? Kamala Harris, Donald Trump, and then nothing else. That's why you see 50.8 to 49.2. And that is a huge red flag when you look at a poll. Now, their distribution as far as their crosstabs is a little bit better than the last poll that they did. However, there are still some issues with these crosstabs. The 18 to 29 should be much, much higher for Kamala Harris. There's no way 18% of Democrats are voting for Donald Trump, and no way 16% of Republicans are voting for Kamala Harris. There's no way 24% of black voters are voting for Donald Trump either. So a lot of these crosstabs are just off, and they throw it off by quite a bit, especially this 24% of black voters. Maybe a good number would be 15, 16%, not 24%. So again, another bad poll by Activo. Again, the red flag is that they don't have a don't know and refuse option, which for any poll, that should be a red flag. Now, we are going to look at an Ohio poll, so that's why you're here. You saw the thumbnail. You want to look at the whole Ohio poll. And we have this SoCal Strategies poll, which is a Republican-sponsored poll by Red Eagle Politics. Don't know who that is. Anyways, in this poll, you see Donald Trump up 52 to 43. Now, if you just look at that horse race number and you look at that top line, you're like, okay, this seems fine. This seems what we expect Ohio to be. Now, let's go over to the crosstabs that this poll had, because there are a few very interesting things. Now, before we get into this one, I want to look at age. And one thing that's kind of off on this one, it shows that Kamala Harris is actually losing voters 18 to 29, 43 to 47. Maybe that's a little more accurate in Ohio. I don't think so, but just remember this number, okay? Just remember this number, 47 to 43. So Donald Trump has 47% of 18 to 29. Let's just say this number's fine. So there are tabs that you see very rarely in polls that can tell us a lot about how the electorate might be. And these are the two that I noticed here. This one. Did you vote in the 2020 presidential election, yes or no? And then this one, did you vote in the 2022 midterm election? Now remember, the 2020 presidential election in the state of Ohio is the second highest turnout in history after 1992 election, since they've been taking turnout records. And overall in the country, it's one of the highest turnout rates in the history of the last 120 years. So the chances are somebody who didn't vote in 2020, they're probably not going to vote in 2022. Now, the one reason why they might not vote is because at the time they just weren't old enough. They were not 18 years old yet. And that's why I went back to that number and I said, remember that 47% for Donald Trump. So if you weren't 18 years old at the time, there's a legitimate reason why you didn't vote. Now, in this number of those who didn't vote, which is, again, 10% of the sample, it has 67, not 47, 67% of non-voters in 2020 saying they were going to vote for Donald Trump, where you have 23% saying they would vote for Kamala Harris. That is a huge skew a huge skew of non-voters. And because this number is so high, and we already know that the younger voters were 47% for Donald Trump, we know that this number of non-voters here is significantly higher age groups. So middle age or 65 and older. So we definitely know that. Now, if we look at those who did vote in the election, we see that Donald Trump is only up by 5, okay, 50 to 45. Now the picture changes a little bit, doesn't it? All of a sudden we're looking at it and go, okay, well, if you take out those people who didn't vote in 2020, which they had the opportunity to vote and they just didn't, they didn't turn out in one of the highest turnout races in the history of this country. Why would they turn out for this race as well? So this number right here that we see for Donald Trump in this poll, this 9-point overall jump, is buoyed by these non-voters. Now, the next one is kind of interesting as well, and that is the number for the midterm electorate. So, of course, midterm electorates are the turnout smaller, but those are your diehard voters. People who are voting in midterms, they're voting in presidential races. They might not be voting for every little position, but they're pretty high turnout voters. This is the core of your voters. Now, if you look at those people who voted in the midterms, you see Kamala Harris is actually winning by 4%, 50% to 46%. That is amazing. And this is why all of a sudden I'm saying if the diehard voters are supporting Kamala Harris, then possibly she can be competing in the state. Now, this tells us two things. Because we're talking about the last midterm, which was Tim Ryan versus J.D. Vance. That tells us, one, there are a lot of people who had voted for J.D. Vance in 2022, and according to this poll, are going to vote for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz in 2024. So you might have some voters there with some buyer's remorse when it comes to J.D. Vance, that you actually see this crossover. The second thing that I think is important that a lot of people aren't talking about is that this number right here shows it doesn't matter where your vice president's from. Okay, if you brought him there to help you win the state, he's not really doing a good job. As a matter of fact, a good chunk of the population that voted for him is now turning over to Kamala Harris. It seems to be having an adverse effect. So these numbers, I think, look really, really good for the Democrats, look really, really good for Kamala Harris. Now, I did say I was going to put the kibosh in this. That's where we start now, because this poll, if we look at it, from this SoCal Strategies, never heard of them. You probably have never heard of them. There's a reason why you've never heard of them. So let's go ahead and click on who they are. And if you click on the poll from 538's website, it immediately goes to a Substack page, which, by the way, if you are on Substack, go to votingtrend.substack.com. That's my Substack. And as you can see, if we look at SoCal Strategies, the person posting it is Chief Pollster. Who the hell is Chief Pollster? And we see here SoCal Data, Chief Pollster, no transparency, nothing about the company, nothing whatsoever. I went ahead and tried to actually Google search this SoCal Strategies company, and I could find nothing. They have a Twitter account in the search. They had a Twitter account right here, SoCal Data, which is exactly the same as this SoCal Data right here. But guess what? Their profile doesn't even exist anymore on Twitter. And then if you look at the questionnaire they have, there's absolutely no contact information or nothing. So this is like some sort of phantom polling company that we don't know who's doing the polling. We don't know who the CEO or the president is of the company. We don't even know where they're based out of. Are they based out of Southern California? We don't know. They're doing a poll in Ohio. They're not doing a California poll. We know nothing about this company. So how can we say, we should take this poll for what it is, when there is absolutely zero data about what this company does and any information about this company on the internet whatsoever? And this comes to a bigger problem that I have with 538, which is they'll just let any Tom, Dick, and Harry go ahead and have a poll in their algorithm. Now, this is a huge problem as well, because in order to qualify as being on 538, you have to be transparent about who you are, which they say transparent about your methodology, but you should also have some transparency as to who the damn people are who are involved with this. But then also, you only have to have a sample size of 100 in order to get into this. And this makes me have more dubious thoughts about 538, because it seems like they're adding polls from essentially anyone. Like, you could just print up a poll, as long as you know methodology, you can just say you did the poll and then just go ahead and connect with them and see. So this is a big problem with 538. So with these numbers, I hope that a legitimate polling company comes in and does Ohio, because I think these dynamics that we see, this could possibly be the case. But we really, and you know, maybe this company is good. I can't tell because there's nothing online about them. We really need a legitimate company to come in and tell us about what Ohio is doing, because these numbers right here, we just can't take. We got to take them with a big grain of salt. I mean, like one of those big blocks of salt, you know, the ones that the horses lick on. Yeah, those are the kind of grains of salt that we have to take with this one. But yeah, it's unfortunate. So take this for what it's worth, which I think is not worth much. But if there is some grain of truth in it, then the Democrats could have a chance in Ohio. All right, and just really quick, I'll look at the electoral map, and I really don't have any changing. I still have the Democrats at 303, Republicans at 235. I do think that we'll look at some new polls. I think I can pull maybe Arizona back into the red, but there's a point where I'm thinking that North Carolina might all of a sudden be in the blue. So we'll see. We'll see if there are any new polls come out this week. But overall, as far as the race for president is concerned, this one is not as, there hasn't been a real change. As a matter of fact, I want to change Alaska there to that color. All right, so there hasn't been too much of a change in the presidential election. So thank you all very much. Please subscribe to the channel, like the video, make a comment below. Thank you very much for joining me, and I will see you in the next video. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.